Terry reporting from the scene. Joining us, we have Brian King from the Japandroids, who are all set to be here on the 24th, playing at the Wall. Tickets still available, though there are not many. You'd have to hurry to get that. Joining us, Brian King. Good day, Brian.
Good evening. For me, how are you doing?
I'm just great. Thanks for joining us. I didn't want to really explain Japandroids music because I thought I'd let you do that. If you had to put it into 2 or 3 sentences, how would you describe the Japandroids?
I just think of us as a rock and roll band, and in the pretty traditional sense. I mean, sometimes on some days we're a little bit more classic rock, and on other days we're a little bit more punk rock, and on other days we're a bit more indie rock. But in general, it's just kind of really simple, really raw, really passionate, just kind of rock and roll.
Well, you mentioned simple. You mentioned simple. There are, of course, just 2 of you in the band, yourself and Dave. How did you guys kind of put the Japandroids together?
Well, we certainly didn't plan to be a duo. We kind of had the idea to start a band together when we were younger, and kind of assumed that eventually we would find other people to play with. And I, of course, played guitar, and Dave played drums, and so we thought, well, we have, 2 of the 4 or 2 of the 5 people, and, we'd start playing together, and then we'd put the word out, and eventually we'd find, someone else, and it just happened that we never really did. And, of course, bands like, really popular duos like the White Stripes or the Black Keys or the Kills or Depth from Above, bands like this, kind of have shown that you can become quite popular, quite successful, and make really good music with only 2 people. And so at some point we just decided to give that a go, and doing that ever since.
Or Hall & Oates.
Of course, Hall & Oates, one of our biggest influences. Actually.
Oh, really? Okay, great. How do you kind of make up for the sound having only 2 of you?
Well, unlike a lot of other duos who sort of embrace the kind of minimalism that being a duo inherently is, we actually have tried to do the opposite. I mean, most of the bands that we are influenced by that we wanted to sound like were 4 and 5, person bands. So we've tried to write songs and perform them in a way that, despite the fact that we only have 2 people, from our records or from our live shows, you might not ever guess it. I mean, you might have to come see us play and count just the 2 of us on stage to fully grasp that we only have 2 people in the band. Right.
And actually, I was going to talk about this just a little bit later, but because it just came up. That exactly did happen to me. Believe it or not, I was outside of the Red Marquee tent at the Fuji Rock Festival last July, and it was, oh wow, who's this band? Wow, let's go, kind of check this out. And lo and behold, only 2 of yous up there making a whole bunch of racket. So, good stuff. But we can talk about that in a moment. You guys just about called it quits after your first full record, Post Nothing. Tell us the story there. What do you mean you almost called it quits, and what was it that kept you, at it?
Well, we more or less did, in fact, call it quits at that time. We'd been a local band here in Vancouver for a couple of years and had kind of been doing what local bands typically do. And, after a couple of years of doing that, we realized, we're not any farther or better off than we were when we first started. We were, played a lot of shows and self-released some albums, but in that whole time, nobody had really shown too much interest in us. I mean, maybe a small local fan base, but nothing really beyond that. And we finished recording our first record, which was Post Nothing, and nobody really seemed interested in helping us release it. And we thought, well, are we going to self-release another album and just stick around here and play more shows for a 4th year, a 5th year? And decided that it was really fun experience, but it was probably just not going to happen for us, and it was time to move on and try something else. And it just happened around that time that we decided put the record on the internet and see what happens. And a few months later, a lot happened very quickly when some big blogs and things started to discover our record online and started passing it around. And we thought, hey, maybe we should get together and see if we can take advantage of this. And
exactly.
The plan originally was to get together and see if we could do one tour. And, that was a few years ago now. So.
Yeah, and you've been touring almost nonstop, it seems. You've been doing a lot of touring. Rolling Stone has listed you guys, your latest record, in the top 10 of their albums for 2012. I mean, just the critical acclaim has, I'm sure, been overwhelming for you guys. What changed on your most recent record that Rolling Stone would put it in their top 10 of the year?
I think it's a combination of things. I think from our end, we just, we found a little bit of success on our first record, and we were very, very conscious, just as music fans, of how, bands that find some success on their first record or make really great first albums have a hard time following that up. And it's very much the case, in rock history that, a band's first record is their best one. Not for every band, but for a lot of them. And we just dedicated ourselves to not being one of those bands and worked, 10 times as hard to make sure that the record we put out next was the best thing that we'd ever done.
Right.
And so from our side, I feel like we accomplished that. At least that's how we felt when we were going to release it. And then I think on something that we can't really control, it's just also happened that the kind of music that we play is not as popular in general, kind of globally as the dominant kind of music like it once was, say, in the 60s or the 90s or basically, most decades previous to the last one, where pop music and hip-hop music and R&B music and dance music has really dominated, like, what's become popular. So
yeah.
I think in terms of stuff like Rolling Stone, every once in a while when a kind of just like, more really good, more traditional rock and roll record comes out, it just sticks out a bit more now than it did, maybe 10, 15 years ago when almost all the big albums were rock records.
Right.
So I think we kind of benefit a little bit from that.
Now the sound is completely different. However, because the setup is the same, just a guitar player and a drummer, the comparisons to the Black Keys, I'm sure, have been made lots of times. How much has that helped or hurt you guys? Given their success, of course.
The comparisons do both. I mean, sometimes, you get compared to bands like that, and it will, fans of those bands will read that, for example, and then want to check you out. But it is a bit misleading because, the kind of music we play is not exactly like those bands. They're a great example of a two-person band that's really embraced being a two-piece.
Yeah.
And the kind of music that they make is, like, a little bit more minimal. They're not trying to sound like there's a bunch more stuff going on like we are. So yeah, and I mean, we like all those bands. So, I mean, it feels really good to be compared to them and stuff like that. But at the same time, there's definitely a lot of being compared to duos for no other reason than you're a duo.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So a lot of that happens too.
All right. Now, we talked about earlier, we know you were at the Japan, the Fuji Rock Festival this past summer. So I know you've been here to Asia before, but this will be your first time to Taiwan, if I'm not mistaken. What do you guys kind of expect when you come? I mean, maybe Asia at large, but when you're coming here to Taiwan, you have any sort of? You guys do any research on it? Do you think the audience is going to have any sort of preconceptions? What are you guys thinking?
I mean, it's a really hard question to answer, especially when you've never been somewhere before. I mean, we've toured all over the world, mostly places that we'd never been before we went there in the band. And I think one of the best mindsets to have that Dave and I have discovered for all that traveling is just to go in without any expectations whatsoever. To go in, totally open-minded about the country and the show and the audience, and that way you can just sort of enjoy it anymore, and there's less room for any kind of like disappointment. I mean, one of the hardest things about playing in a touring band and getting to go to places like Taiwan where you've never been before is that you actually don't have that much time.
Yeah, right.
So that's often the biggest disappointment is you come to some place and you're like, wow, there's all this stuff I want to see and I want to do, and you only get to be there for 2 days, and one of those days you're totally occupied with the show.
Right.
But pretty much our favorite thing in the world to do is to play shows in new places for new people. So I'm really excited to play for people that have never seen us play before.
Has there been one place thus far?
Pardon me?
Sorry, has there been one place thus far that has really struck a chord with you guys for any reason, be it the audience, be it the surrounding, be it the venue, be it anything?
Oh, there's countless. I mean, just this year we played for the first time in South America. We toured through all of Europe to countries we'd never been before. This year, I mean, this upcoming tour, of course, every single place we're going to play on this tour is somewhere we've never been and we've never played before.
Awesome.
So everywhere sticks out. Sometimes it's for good reasons. Sometimes it's for bad, but I could talk you to death about almost any place we've been over the last few years.
Awesome.
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Now, you guys in America, at least, kind of hit the mark of cool because they that play on the Jimmy Fallon show, of course. Now, you guys have been there twice. Right. But just talk to me a little bit about the experience playing on the Jimmy Fallon show. And I only ask almost as a personal question because I really like Jimmy Fallon and I love his show and everything like that. Is he sort of as quirky and intelligent and quick in person? Did you guys really feel like you had made it the first time you were on there? Because that was a couple of years ago. Was there any kind of cool or hipness factor for you guys as well?
I mean, the first time that we played there and the second time we played there were sort of night and day, because the first time that we played on it, we were so nervous and we were so just fearful of basically blowing it on TV. And while the show is not actually recorded live technically, you only get one chance to play your song, so it might as well be live, for you.
Yep.
And, you play, instead of seeing an audience when you perform, you see a lot of lights and a lot of cameras. And it's very foreign for bands that are used to playing, a small club or something, for a bunch of their fans. But the show goes out of their way to try and make you, feel as comfortable as you will. And, Jimmy comes and talks to you before the taping, and he's really funny, and he's very, very personal, and you get to meet the Roots.
Awesome.
And you get a little tour of the studio, and it was a really positive experience. Though the second time we played, we were a lot less nervous and we had a lot more fun. And we actually did 2 songs that time.
Right.
And that time was really really great. It felt like being on tour when you play a city or you play the same venue, a year after, 2 years after you'd already been there. It feels a little bit like coming home in a way. So.
Yeah, right. A little more familiar. All right. Lastly, Brian, I want you to think of one song. Now, this is going to be tough. I want you to think of sort of one song, if you can, that you guys feel really embodies the Japandroids. That really, if you had to put forth one song and say, this is what we're all about, what song would that be?
I'd have to say, especially after this past year, I'd have to say The House That Heaven Built, which is from our new record. I think that, after touring Celebration Rock this past year so much, you can really tell when a song kind of hits home with your audience. And when we play that song every night, the energy of the room, the feeling that you get from the audience is never greater than when we do that one. And I think it's the best way to introduce the band to people that have never heard us before. Because I feel like if you don't like that one, then you're not going to like anything else.
Right.
So you might as well give that to them first.
Well, Brian, then if you would do us the honor here, why don't you introduce yourselves and introduce that song for you, and we'll hit it as soon as you're done. It's been Brian King here from the Japandroids. They're in town at the Wall Live House on the 24th. Doors open at 8. The show's on at 10. Tickets are barely available, so if you're thinking of getting them, you better get them quick. Brian, take it away if you could.
Hi, this is Brian, one half of Japandroids, and this is our new single, The House That Heaven Built.